right, everyone. Richard Carlton. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. You are looking at the production engineer's computer where she's attempting to show you my face. I hope that it pops up. I am Richard Carlton, a creator of FM Train at TV, where every day at 1 o'clock in the Pacific time zone, we are doing live streams. Upcoming broadcast schedules, you can see today, we got Kristian Olsen. He's going to be here talking about hacking FileMaker with modules of happiness, right? And once again, there are some improvements with FM Starting Point. You saw some of them yesterday. I got to work on those, and we're going to work on getting these kind of locked and loaded out the door for you. We'll update the downloads. Some of you had a couple suggestions. A couple of you said, hey, it'd be really great if you built this total module for me so then I could bill my customer and actually wouldn't have to do the work. And I was like, okay, that's a great idea. So anyway, then tomorrow is going to be Monkey Spread doing PDF management. We should do 1 day a week on JavaScript, 1 day a week on PDF management, and 1 day a week on document management. And if we did those three and we just repeat them with different topics, but those subjects, right? Different individualized topics, that's a huge deal because that's a vast majority of the questions that go on. Like, and then 1 day on how not to light my FileMaker on fire. Right? That would be the other one. So that would leave one open day, but that would cover 90% of the questions we get, right? I mean, we get people like, hey, my FileMaker server crashed. We keep using the crash file. How long should I expect to live before I die a horrible death? That comes up periodically. We got another email the other day, and I'm not picking on this person if you're here. The person said, hey, I'm working on my FileMaker 5 file. I could use some help. I thought about upgrading, so I went on eBay and bought a copy of FileMaker 11. Can you help me? I, Richard Carlton, am the only person left alive at RCC, and I mean that seriously, who can help you. And my hourly rate is more expensive than what you want to pay by quite a bit. And so as a result of that, there are no people who are alive who are capable of helping you be excessively cheap and not upgrade your software. So this
even if Richard wanted to help you, he'd have to pull a computer out of a closet that still runs.
Well, yeah, I have to go back to like a Mac LC or something like that. Maybe like a Quadra or something, or maybe one of those power. What was it? It was the 601 processors, right? The Power Max, right? The 601, the very first.
The Motorola's.
I have those. I have that with the upgraded.
They still work.
Oh, they work. They work. Absolutely work. So anyway, so I could do that, but the hourly rate on that is prohibitively expensive for most people. So then next week, we have WolfPack action. That's where the wolf does it doggy style on the FileMaker, and that will be very exciting. Calvin will be there for that. Is Stu helping with doggy style? What's going on with this?
Stu, I'll be there to illuminate their greatness. So Calvin's got an update to the left-hand navigation, which is a really popular add-on. I use it a lot. And then Stu, Nick redid, if you remember, Richard, in Starting Point, when you go to relate a record to another record, like a contact to an account, Nick kind of redid those screens in one of the live streams. So then Calvin took that, he made it more modular so that he could go and move it around other places. Stu took that and made it into an add-on. And I'm actually using it on real production files, and it's really neat. So Stu will be here along with Calvin to show off his new release to WolfPack 10. And then I've got a real minor update to one of mine that I'll tell people about, but I'm the small part of that.
Yeah, so Margaret, you're going to let these three run this on Monday. I won't be there for that. Kristian, what are we doing today? Okay, what are you doing and why should we give it? Was normally what I always tell people. If you come to the TV show, you should be prepared to answer that very hard question.
That's a good question. Well, it actually started the conversation you and I had last week because we were talking about some customer files, and you were talking about the need to move modules from one place to another. And I said, I've been doing this a lot more with one of the tools I already have to basically duplicate modules. And so why does this matter? So today is going to be a lot about how can we do things that would normally take us a long time a lot quicker. And actually what I'm doing today is something I've presented on many times before. So I'm not actually showing you guys anything new, but I'm going to show you it in a wider level. And hopefully this will help some of you to get a better grasp on how to use some of these things. I've got tools out there that you can use to let you kind of do this. And while I'm not going to sit and try to be like, oh, look at something that's not available, I do have a release or an update to one of the tools that I have out there for free. And I might preview that a little bit, but it's not actually ready, but it does help to make some of this stuff easier. So I think that's maybe a good segue into it. And I do want to give a quick disclaimer before I kind of jump into the overview on this. I keep copies of Starting Point on my desktop. I actually would recommend you guys do that as well. It's really great if I have a meeting with new leads, I pull it out. But it's also just a lot of times I'm working on a file and I'm like, oh, that exists in one of my copies of Starting Point. So I have several versions on my desktop. The problem is I mess with those files. So I've gone and I've cleaned it up. I think I've removed the weird little things I mess around with my team in the morning and leave it on there. I also happen to use Nick's copy of Starting Point. And so when I go through the script folder later, you might see some things that are broken. This isn't things that I broke and are not working with mine. They're just things that are broken in Nick's version of Starting Point, which we have a whole disclaimer on. So if those come up, I'll bring it up. I just wanted to mention that now. I should have just used one of our new copies. So today's topic is basically going to be on module duplication. And so I'll give you guys a real world example of this. Let's say you're using Starting Point, you're working with a client and they go, hey, this is great. You know, I've got businesses that I need to track. I have people that I need to track. I need to do invoices, estimates, all that stuff is great. But my line of work, I actually track locations. So there might be a parent company like McDonald's or Burger King, but the entity that I deal with is specific locations, the one that's over here on this street or in this city.
We've done that.
So
we've done that. We've done McDonald's. Yep. And different locations. Yep.
And so you'll look at Starting Point and you'll go, okay, so we need a locations module. So we're going to need to build a new module. It's probably going to have a detail view. It's going to have a list view. We're going to need to have the tabs. We're going to basically, you know, locations is a lot like accounts because it doesn't have a first name or a last name. It just has a name, an address information, contact information, people are related to it. So it's a lot like accounts. And so you might come over to the accounts module and be like, okay, let's just rebuild accounts and start to customize it. And as an engineer at RCC used to tell our junior engineers, just one of these tabs over here can be representative of hundreds of hours, if not tens of hours, if not hundreds of hours of development.
Okay, so this is before anyone says anything, that's FMSP 22, not 23.
Yes.
Right.
And so it's Nick's version.
Oh, it's Nick's. Okay, so it's triple.
Yeah.
We violated every natural law of computer science. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things I will try to mention at the end, I didn't make a demo for this. I kind of forgot to, but I'll show you guys is this tool can be used to do a variety of things. So in the deep end of it, I'll wait maybe to the end of this. I've had people using old versions of Starting Point as kind of an example. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And when they look at the new version, they're like, oh, we want that. And it's like, okay, well, how do we bring that layout over to the one that they have? Now you can copy and paste the layout, but then a bunch of stuff gets broken. So kind of the underlying conversation of all this is anytime you need to move code in FileMaker, stuff is going to break. So you want to figure out what is the path that will break the least amount of stuff, because that means that there's the least amount of work to get what you want out of it. And so when I have clients, whether they're in property management or medical inspection or schools, and I identify that they need other modules that aren't in Starting Point, I try to first figure out, is there a module that's really close to what they want? I didn't want to do it for today's example, but I will give you guys one other example that I've done many, many, many times, and that's purchase orders. Purchase orders are a lot like an invoice, except the reverse version of it. So whenever someone says to me, Kristian, I need purchase orders added to Starting Point, I immediately go, you need a copy of accounts for vendors, you need a copy of invoices and invoice line items that need a purchase order. And rather than building this all from scratch, let's start with those modules, duplicate them, and then customize backwards to get to where you are. Because customizing one of those modules is going to take significantly less time than trying to build it from scratch. So when you decide that this is a route that you want to go, the order in which you do things matters a lot. I didn't bring it to today's meeting, but I think we've shared it in previous ones. Todd Geist has a checklist from a long time ago, like version 12, that says that you want to do the things in this specific order to break the least amount of things. And we're going to be following that same kind of order, but I'm going to break the steps down for you guys into a lot less things, because in this specific context, we're going to be working in the same file. So we don't need to worry about themes or custom functions or some of the other things that you would need to move if you're going from one file to another. But that is something to keep in mind. So I've got a couple pre-baked pies in the oven, if you will, but I am going to try to build this from start to finish to give you guys an idea of what this looks like. And I'm going to try to go as slow as I can, because I could actually just pump this out real quick, but let's see if I can't kind of show you guys how to save some steps. And I think by doing so, even if you don't necessarily get the whole find interplace XML tricks from this, you might learn some stuff that's useful to you. So thank you, Stu, for sharing that. All right, so I'm going to jump into Manage Database. And so if you decide that you need to duplicate a module, the first thing that you're going to need to do is duplicate the structure. Once the structure is duplicated, you need to duplicate the scripts. Once the scripts are duplicated, then you can start working on the physical layouts themselves. So I'm just going to come over here to tables, and I'm going to say, you know what? I need a copy of accounts. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. And now I've got accounts too. So I'm going to come over to my relationship graph, and I'm going to do something really unusual. I'm just going to delete that. Okay. And there's a couple different ways to do this next part. I'm going to talk about a couple different versions of this. This next step people do in many different ways. This is the one way I'm going to show you guys, and I'll talk others. Now, I'm going to close Manage Database real quick, just because I need that name to be released from the relationship graph, and I'll show why in just a second. I'm going to go back to Manage Database, and I'm going to highlight. I'm going to zoom out a little bit too, because I'm in that really high res. But I'm going to highlight this entire piece of structure right here, okay? Now, holding the Option key on a Mac, and I think Control on Windows, I'm just going to drag over, and I now have a copy of it. See that? And let's go make some space over here. Okay. And we will call this, I don't know, T35 locations. I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to double click on our anchor here, and I'm going to highlight that name, and I'm going to change it from accounts to accounts 2. Paste that name back in. Oh, that's weird. Look, it makes it invisible. The reason I closed Manage Database and reopen it was it won't let you actually use this name until you close it and reopen it, so it just saves us a little bit of time. I'm going to say OK, but now I've got another issue. And so like I said, this is where if you read Todd Guy's checklist, he'll actually say that you need to duplicate the table and then you need to fix the relationships. The way that I used to do this, and you guys still can, is instead of deleting that first TO, or well, basically I would take that original TO and bring it over here, delete this one, put the new one there, and redraw every single relationship. That is historically how I've always done this, and it's a little bit cumbersome. The problem with the method that I'm doing right now is if we go to fields and we go to the new accounts, you're going to notice that a lot of stuff is broken. See that? Okay. And that's because in the very beginning, I took our TO and I deleted it. If I actually open one of these calculations up, it didn't, I should have done it before. There was no context in which this calculation could fire from. Now the calculation has been restored. So I could come in here. This is going to be really fun with light mode. I could come in here and replace all the field missings on every single calculation, auto enter calculation, and lookup. Or I can come over to the original accounts and I can highlight everything and I can kind of deduce which fields I need to basically re-import, if you will. So I know that these are used for relationships. If I scroll down, I'm going to just undo the globals because those don't break. I'm going to unselect the IDs because those are used in the relationship, which I'm trying to avoid having to rebuild. And there's a couple others on here that I can't quite remember that are used in the relationship as well. I think there's one more that I'm forgetting. That's okay. And it's also I have the pre-built oven, so if we run into an issue, I can quickly fix it. So I'm going to copy these. I'm going to go over to Accounts 2 and highlight everything. And I'm going to unselect those same fields. So again, I'm basically looking for things like globals or anything that could be used in a relationship because I don't want to break my relationships. Conversely, you could just keep all of those original fields and rebuild the relationships. You're going to want to basically practice this step a few times, and don't beat yourself up when it doesn't work the first time. In fact, one of the things with this feature that I'm going to show you guys today is you should plan in your workflow when you do this that it's not going to work the first time, especially when we get to the find and replace. And that's okay. As long as you know how to go backwards and try it again, you're going to fail at this a few times until you start to get the hang of it. It's taken me a lot of practice to get it. So I think I've got everything that I want out of there. I'm going to go ahead and delete those and see if I get any errors. We're just going to twiddle our thumbs now while it does some deleting. And that might be because I closed manage database earlier, but that's okay. There we go. Flag status. Oh, I thought I unselected all the flags. That's okay. So then we are going to paste those ones in. And I'm going to kind of just glance at this to see if some stuff's broken. I know a couple that are broken, but what's nice about that, if you remember all those spots but didn't know where they're coming from, they're just magically rebuilt. Now, go ahead.
Maybe you said this, and I was paying attention to some other stuff. Why not just instead of trying to select the ones, why not just carpet bomb all of them?
That's a great question. If I deleted all of them, all my relationships over here would get broken. So the way that, and I did mention this, but I'll say it again. So the way that I used to do this, and when I say used to, like I might have even done it a couple months ago or like a couple weeks ago, is when I duplicate the table, I would come over here, delete this TO, bring that one over and redraw the relationships. You might find that you like that better. In fact, I would recommend you guys maybe start with it, because fixing the whole field calculation thing, it can be really confusing. I'm doing it right now because other than me pulling a pre-baked oven out of the oven, me sitting and clicking on these and fixing them, it's tedious. Does it take hours? No. But it can take a little bit of time. And usually what I have to do is come over here and take a picture or write all these down. Because while some of these are obvious and I know them by heart, there's other ones that I don't necessarily remember what the relationship was and need to rebuild it. Additionally, some of these relationships are going to need to be adjusted because we're duplicating the module. So keep in mind that everything that's in there might not be the way that we want it exactly. But it gets us to a location that's going to have the least amount of stuff to do versus more. So I come back to fields. I do need to make sure that ID constant is fixed, because you'll notice that ID constant still says unknown. And the issue there it is. I deleted that original TO, so it's lost all context on how it calculates. So we're just going to choose our TO12, and I'm going to say OK. And I think the rest of these in here should basically be fixed. And if they're not, for at least today's demo, it doesn't matter. But that's one of the methods I like there. Another thing, there are, again, different approaches that you can take on this. One of the things I do to save time that I'm going to point out because it's purposeful is you'll notice that this says T01 accounts too. I haven't changed it to T35 locations. And all of the TOs attached to it are the same name with a 2. One of the next steps that's coming up, you'll see why I do that. Now, you could take the time to rename all these right now, and in the next step, if you use the correct name, it'll work fine. The issue with that is it makes it much more likely that you're going to make a spelling error. And as all of my clients that work with me know, my kryptonite is spelling. So what I like about having this 2 on top of it is that it's really easy to take the original name and put a space 2. When everything's done being rebuilt, then I will just come in here and click on these and change the names, because at that point, nothing will break. Similarly, a lot of those field names need to be adjusted, but don't change the name of anything until the duplication process is done, or stuff is just going to break. A big part of why all of this works is when you take one module and duplicate into another, everything has the same names. That's why I was able to come over here to accounts and copy fields with calculations and come over here and paste them, and they just work. There's only one TO for this to calculate. Everything has the same name. All the relations are basically the same, and it just fixes itself. But you'll notice, look down here, I've got one that's broken. So let's go back to filter ID account. And again, I'm just going to copy it. Well, in this case, I can actually just take the calculation. You're going to want to practice this part. And again, I would practice on like a copy of Starting Point or one of your own files to just kind of get the flow down, because initially this part can be kind of hard. All right, so I think we're done with that. So we've got, now that our structure is rebuilt, and by structure, we have a table, we have the fields, and we have a place on the relationship graph for things to be referenced from. Now we can start rebuilding our scripts and our layouts because they have actual fields and relationships to use. And so when I used to do this, I'll admit that I didn't think of doing the scripts or the order that you would do it in. And so I would duplicate the layouts, and I'd have to go through the layout and fix every single button and script trigger, which was pretty miserable. Let me just make sure I don't lose any notes there. Nope. So now what we're going to do is bring this tool over here. And I'm going to use the new module in it, but I'm also going to use the old one. So you guys can get this from our website. This has been around for at least a year. And it's called Wolf's Toolbox. And we have the clip helper. And the clip helper allows you to do a sequence of find and replaces on XML. The other thing that it does, thanks to both Monkey Bread and Kyle Williams using base elements, it can extract the XML code that is under the hood out of FileMaker from both the scripts, the layouts, basically anywhere. And that's where you can then run the sequences of find and replaces. One of the things that I think that is unique about this versus some of the other tools out there that do the same thing is, instead of just doing a find this, replace it with this, you can run a sequence. And if I go to the new module, which isn't done, I call this module maker because it uses everything that's already in WolfPack or Wolf's Toolbox, but it organizes it in a way that made it easier for me to duplicate modules. And so you can see over here, there's two find and replace sequences that I really need to do, or repos that I need to do. The first one is TOs. And this is where I mentioned why I specifically like having the two, because I need to replace all the instances of TO1 underscore accounts with TO1 underscore accounts 2. There's our first buoy, replaced with the same buoy, but with a 2, and so on and so forth. And we do this 23 times. So there are 23 relationships, including grandchildren's, in the table occurrence group for accounts. The other thing that we need to do is rebuild all the scripts, because everything in here calls the scripts for that module, and we don't want it to call the old scripts. We want it to call the new scripts that don't exist yet. So like the TOs, I just take whatever the script name is and I add a 2. And again, I want to emphasize that you could, at this stage, instead of putting this in here, put the name of the new script that you want. You could absolutely do that. And you might find that it's faster to do it in here versus renaming them afterwards. And by all means do that. I might do it at a future point. I still don't right now, just because of spelling errors. Like trying to sit and hunt for one. Like yesterday when I was practicing this, I would forget to put the S on TO1 accounts too. And so I'm like, why is this not working? So just a little difference will cause this not to work. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to the script workspace and I'm going to find accounts. So this is all of the scripts associated with that module by and large. And I'm going to just do a Command C to copy it to my clipboard. And I'm going to come over here. And if you're using the version of Wolf's Toolbox that you guys can get right now, you'd be in the clip helper. You'd already want to create your find and replace repos, and you would do the get clip. And this right here is the XML that represents every script in the accounts folder. Look at that. Isn't it nice that we get to use the script workspace rather than writing in that? In the new one that I'm working on, that again is not quite done, because it's a module maker, you can actually just save one of your clips for scripts, and then you can save clips for the various layouts, and it just makes it a little bit more organized. But the old version that you guys still have access to works just the same. I'll show you how to use that. So now I'm going to go ahead and do some find and replaces on this. So I'm going to run the find and replace to replace all the TO names with the new ones. So we're going to do replace all. And it's going to, you can't hear it, but it's beeping on my side. Okay, now on that same clip, I want to replace all of the script names with the script name original with the 2. So we're going to do replace all. and it's done. So we've got the script. I've already done the find replace, but just one thing I want to again re-highlight here is in the version you guys have, you have to run the replace all and remember to hit the set clip, which brings it back to your clipboard. This is the part that I always tend to forget. So now we're going to come back over here. I'm going to open the script workspace up, and we're going to scroll down to accounts, and I'm just going to paste it right next to it. So if you guys ever remember my live stream on how to duplicate the notes module, this is the same thing. And I apologize, I should have turned Monkey Bread off before the thing because it's putting everything in dark mode.
All right, now
I should have fixed that.
There we go. Yeah. So explain what's the difference between your new, because you're freaking everyone out with the new thing versus not the new.
And you know what I can do? I'll just stick in the old one for now, so I don't necessarily throw you guys off. So the old one is what I'm looking at right here now. And also to back up, if anyone wants to go play with this the first time, we have a video when Wolf's Toolbox was first released, and I showed how to just duplicate the notes module from like contacts into the staff module. That's a really great place to start. This is, and I alluded to what else you could do with it. This was the stuff that I was really doing with it. And, you know, Stu had mentioned in one of the threads and in WolfPack or not, this is a tool that we don't really promote as much, and it's really kind of underappreciated. And I'll tell you, when I first released Wolf's Toolbox, I wasn't using it as much as my team was. So a number of the kind of the junior mid-level engineers on me that were working on my projects, I would teach them how to use it. And they were actually using it a lot more than I was. And that's also when I realized, hey, this needs some improvements. It's just been hard to. So if you're in Wolf's Toolbox and you go to the clip helper specifically, the clip helper has kind of three main functions and then little bonus functions. The main thing is that you can go into FileMaker, into a script space or the layout. And if you highlight something and do Command-C, I'll show you that. So if I click on just this button and I do Command-C, and I come over here and I do Get Clip, it extracts the XML out of your clipboard and puts it in here. So there's that button. This is what the button on the home screen looks like in its XML form. The next thing that it lets you do is write a find and replace that says, okay, well, I'm taking this button from contacts and I want to move it over to accounts. So find all the instances of TO5 underscore contacts and replace it with TO1 underscore accounts. And then you can do the find and replace, and then the set clip puts it back into your clipboard to paste in there. If you only do the find and replace, you're not able to inject it back into FileMaker. So get clip, replace all, set clip. The new version, which maybe I'll just come to at the very end. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with what is and isn't released. Make some of these things a bit easier to do. On the left here are the various repos that we have. So let's go back. Let's redo the script thing again, just real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and find accounts. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to take our accounts folder. I'm going to copy it. So I'm just doing a Command-C. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say get clip. And there's all of our scripts. I'm going to run a replace all for the TO names. Again, we're changing the original TO to TO2. And then we're going to say replace all the scripts from version 1 to version 2. And did it run? Don't seem too fast. I didn't get it. Oh, I'm adding replace records. All right. So now we're going to do set clip. We're going to come back over here and we're just going to do a Command-V to paste that in. And we're going to close the neomorphism folder because Nick's copy just has some broken stuff. And I want you guys to think it broke. You can see all those scripts. Sorry, I'm clicking through these really quickly because I know to look for and I'm explaining it. I'm looking for broken stuff, like set field. Like, let me show you this because this is Nick's and he's got broken stuff in here. So this is a good. See that how it says table? Very obviously there's stuff broken here. And this isn't because I broke it. It's actually just broken in the original. There we go. Unknown. It's just a little bit more broken than the new one. So I'm looking to see the / or the slash and the little, not asterisk, but the star to say, hey, I don't know what this is. And I can tell that all that stuff is basically working because I don't see those error codes. And in fact, if we take a closer look, you'll notice that this file says TO1 accounts 2, TO1 accounts 2. And because all the field names match, it's able to just do it. If you change the field names, then you have to be more specific in the find and replace. Replace it with T01 accounts billing street 1 to T35 locations Street one, it's going to require more find and replaces. That's one of the reasons I go in kind of this order. But I have now a new folder of all of our scripts from the accounts module rebuilt. So you can imagine if you were to duplicate these scripts and one by one go each line and fix it, this would take quite some time to sit and go through and rebuild. And I'm not saying that nothing in here doesn't have any issues, but if a handful of these scripts need a little bit of massaging, that is a lot less broken stuff than building it from scratch. Okay, let's go to the next step of this. So now I've got scripts. That's great, but I don't actually have any layouts to go to represent this duplication for accounts. So let's open the layout manager and let's go find accounts. And we're just going to rebuild Nick's neomorphism layouts. In fact, we're just going to do 2 of them right now. I think once I do the 2, you'll kind of get what the flow is that we're doing here. But I'm going to take this folder and I'm just going to duplicate it. Okay. And then I'm going to open this one. Well, first I'm going to double click on it and it's still using the old TO. So we need to fix that. So we're going to say, hey, use the new TO. If your layout has script triggers, I tend to forget this. You got to go in and fix those because they are using the old scripts. Okay. So we can just click on this. We can say select. One of the reason I like renaming these with the same number is I can just search 598 and look, there it is. So that's one of the reasons I do that. I find that until I'm done, it makes my life just a little bit easier. So 600, there's 2. We're going to go to this one. 53 is a universal script. I just know that because I work with Nick's stuff a lot. And then we're going to look for 607. That one's down here. And then I think we got one more, 607. Okay, so these are our new scripts using our new context. So now our script triggers are done, and we're using the new context here. So I'm going to say, okay, we're going to open the layout, and everything is going to be broken on it because we're in the wrong table. And that's fine. That's how I want it to be right now. Okay, so I'm going to go into layout mode. I'm going to do a Command A, Command C. So I've now copied everything. And this next part actually takes a little bit longer. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to do Get Clip. And there's our layout. And if I scroll through this, it's lengthy. This is a big, complicated layout. Okay, so let's replace all the TOs with the old stuff to the new stuff. So we're going to do replace all. And like I said, these find replaces, they take a second. I'd rather the computer sit and do all the hard work, though, than me. So I can sit here and I can drink my yerba mate and let the computer rebuild an entire layout for me. And I'll tell you, when I was new, and I'm sure some of you guys have done this, when someone came to me and said, I need this, I would duplicate the layout and go through the objects and say, instead of this, you're this, instead of this, you're this, and fix, and it took a long time. Okay, so my computer is just beeping at me. It's doing all those find and replaces. I don't know if you can see the rainbow wheel, but it's working hard. It's actually working harder with the screen share on than it was when I did it last night, so. Computer must have to work hard. There we go. So that was just the TOs. But now all the buttons, they're still attached to the old scripts. We need to fix that. So let's say, hey, let's go through and replace it with, script 1 to script 2, script 1 to script 2, so on and so forth. So we're going to do our replace all. And this one's usually a little bit faster, but still going to take a second. Can't hear, but it's beeping, beeping, beeping right now to give me some feedback. I'm saying, okay. And then I remember, this is the part I forget a lot. Hit the set clip. We're going to come over here. We're going to delete everything. Oops. So I'm going to delete all those. And before I delete it, I always look at what my coordinates are. So you can see this is in the 0 and 0 position for left and top. So I don't want to skip over the stuff that I kind of just know because I do this a lot. Let's come over here. Let's say delete. And then I'm going to paste this back in there. I'm going to move this into the corner. And you can already start to see TO2 accounts. TO1 accounts 2. TO1I accounts notes 2. If I double click on a field on screen, you can see that it's coming from the right context. So now I'm going to go to browse mode. And I'm going to make a new record and location 1. Now, one of the things I didn't do, and I don't have well enough time today to do some of the experiments I was going to show you guys, but you can try to replace the word accounts with locations. And this is where I say, when you do these things, just be prepared that stuff's sometimes not going to work. And the order that things go in, it matters a lot. And these find and replaces are specific, but also not specific. And here's what I mean by that. If I decide, hey, I want every place that says accounts to say locations, because all of the field labels say that, and that'll save me a lot of time. That's true. But you know what else also says accounts in it? All those relationship names. So it's going to replace accounts here with that word. So you just got to be kind of cautious about what you can and can't replace. I don't know that I'll have time for it today, but on a smaller scale, what I've been actually doing for a few of my clients is I have a layout with just our commonly used portals. And I will go in and basically say, hey, take that estimates portal and change it from estimates to purchase orders, and then change ID estimate to ID purchase order. Change this to that, change this to that. And I do have a list of gotchas that I'm going to get to at the end here, because there's some stuff that does break, and I've kind of learned that it just breaks every time. And that's okay, though. Again, what breaks the least amount of stuff? And you'll notice there's like sometimes some weird visual things on screen. I don't know if this is because I've messed with this file on my desktop, or just something a little finicky with the find and replace that we're doing. So when you do this, just realize that there are going to be some things that don't flawlessly work, but check this out. I can click add note, and I've got my value list. Now, if I want a different value list, I'm going to have to change it because it's using the accounts one. And I can come in here and I can put notes. I can add another note. So new, T2, text 2. I can click on the buttons. It all just works. In fact, and then you got to be careful with the IDs, but basically everything in here just works now. The accordion is going to work. All of my fields are in here. The searches work. Just about everything works. Now, one of the things that's not going to work is it's going to take me to the old accounts list view, because that layout didn't exist, and I haven't really figured out exactly how you change it from the old layout name to the new one. Maybe at some point I'll figure that out. But let's open the layout manager, and let's go to list view, and I'm going to edit this one. And both in the interest of saving time and because Nick's version is using the wrong script triggers, I'm just going to disable these. For today's demo, that doesn't really matter, but remember, you got to do the script triggers. You got to change the context. We're going to say, okay, we're going to open that layout. And then let's also do this just so they're easy to keep track of. I'm going to put a 2 on the end of these, because right now they just have the exact same name as the other ones. And I'm going to want to fix the navigation while we're watching this. Okay, so we're going to go into layout mode. Again, we're going to do Command A, Command C. Come over here, extract the XML. There's our list view. We're going to replace all the TOs. So we're going to do our replace all. It's going to be, but it says layout's a lot less complicated, so a lot faster. Okay, and then we're going to do the scripts. We're going to do replace all. We're going to say okay. And then we're going to do set clip. Come over here, highlight everything. I believe it's in the 0, 0 position. Yep, I always check that. So delete everything, paste it in. And I can kind of just tell it's working because it doesn't say unrelated on these now. That's pretty good feedback that something's gone right there. But let's fix just a couple things. We're not going to fix everything. And then I want to make sure I get you to some of the gotchas. So we're going to come over here and we're going to say, hey, we're not going to that layout. We're going to this one. Okay, same thing with this button. Not going to that. And this is the old way of doing things. So I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this have been like, oh, I've done that before. Okay. Say browse. And there is my new location 1 that I had created, and I can go to that record. And then similarly on this screen, I would just need to go up here to list view and change this from the old one to the new one. Okay. And so here's what's nice now. So let's say I have this client. This client's like, hey, Kristian, you know, I need locations. And I go, well, we're going to have to build a new module. I think I used to tell people, you know, that's going to take me 30 hours approximately. I hate even trying to give people estimates or quotes, but I'm like, for me to go take all of the structure, for me to go take all of those scripts and to rebuild all of that, it's a pretty hefty chunk of time. And that, I think the 30 was when I got pretty fast at it. And then that time came down, but you know, we just redid all of this in the stream. I didn't actually have to even pull out any of my pre-cooked stuff. I expected for most of you to go do this the first time. This part about fixing the relationships and fixing the fields, that's the part that's pretty tricky to kind of figure out what's going on. Why does this work? And I would encourage people to just kind of tinker around with it a little bit. But again, to go back to my client now, hey, we've got a duplication for accounts. We can jump between a list view, detail view. We have all of our tabs. If they're not 100% functional, they're pretty darn close. And we can even just hide the things that we're not necessarily going to use yet. And we can start the customization from this starting point rather from scratch. I think it's self-evident that gives a lot more value to people than trying to rebuild this from scratch. In fact, when I have to build a holistically fresh module, I mean, it can be 10 hours just to get going. Forget any tabs, forget anything else. So I find this to be hugely useful when you have a situation where duplicating the modules makes sense. Okay, there are some gotchas. Let me make sure that I didn't miss anything for you guys. Copy script folder, change that, change that. Oh, also at this point, assuming there's no other duplications I need to do in terms of layouts or whatnot, it's now safe to kind of come in here and rename all of these, rename your fields and rename your scripts. Because at this point, all the connection points should be established. And so renaming them doesn't break anything. So that's about the part where I would do that. But let's go look at the notes tab for a second. And I don't know if anybody noticed this, but we're missing something here. Okay, so I'm going to click in here and I'm going to put today's date. And what the heck? I'm going to open the data viewer. And I believe that's, take a look here. Notes. Selected. There we go. Current note. And we're going to look for date. Note. Is it right in front of me and I just don't see it? I see date. There we go, date. So it's got the date in there. In fact, if I move this off to the side and I change this, it's storing it. And when you guys go to do this, you're probably going to spend some time trying to reformat it and you'll start pulling your hair out. I don't know definitively. People out there that are more familiar with XML might be able to tell you why date fields just break. So when you do this, you can't fix this field as far as I'm aware. Now, someone else might be more knowledgeable on this than I am. You basically have to, oops, get out of the way, Zoom. You basically have to drag the field on screen and rebuild it. I'm not going to necessarily do that right now. And you can copy the elements in terms of the styling and themes and put it in there. But just be aware that anywhere there's a date, I think there might be one in list view as well. There's not. Dates just break. So that's one of the gotchas to be aware of. Another one is merge fields. In fact, I think there might be some on here, or maybe it's list view. Merge fields when you're in a local table to another one, those ones don't always necessarily rebuild. Sometimes they do. That can be a little bit finicky, so you just kind of have to watch out for that one. And the order, and I mentioned this earlier, but I want to really emphasize this. The order that you replace things in matters. So over here in this toolbox, you have these find and replaces. And what I'm doing right now is just changing TOs from a source one to a target one, script names from a source one to a target one. But at some point you might find this is just really helpful that you have a portal over here that you like, and you want to move it from one place to another. And so you want to start changing field names. So I always do the TOs first and the field names second, because if I change something really generic like ID estimate to IDPO, I might break something else in there that I don't realize. So when things are happening, just look at the order that they go in and how generic is the word. So when I change field names, a lot of times I'll put the whole TO in front of it, because again, I can't replace ID estimate with IDPO, because oftentimes in the relationship graph, especially the way that RCC and myself does things, you're going to have those names in here. And it's not, it doesn't know that you're just trying to change on that field. It changes it everywhere in the XML. So the order that you do things matters. And so again, it's not released today, but I'm going to show you guys a little bit about the new one. And I'll tell you a couple of things that I'm working on. If you have some suggestions, by all means, you can send them in. So in the new version of this, the module maker, all it is the same repos that we have. and then the same clips that you have. But one of the things I realized would be nice would be able to click on the order that these are and to change them, to basically say, hey, I need to do scripts, then detail view, then list view, and here are the repos that I'm going to run. Kind of put it in an organized way. So as an example, the next time someone comes to me and goes, hey, I need purchase orders in Starting Point, I might already have a module maker for it. You know, as we change our versions of Starting Point, I might have to go in and change some of the find and replaces to match what's in there and new. The other thing that's really nifty about this is maybe you like something that Nick has in his copy of Starting Point or a new version of Starting Point. You want to bring it back to yours. Now you go and you copy the layout and you paste it in a bunch of stuff breaks. And you realize there's a handful of new relationships. Let me just turn my do not disturb back on. A handful of like new relationships or new scripts. Well, you could copy it, put it into Wolf's Toolbox, add just a handful of sequence replaces, and then paste it in. An example where I've used this a lot is if you guys have used Nick's Launchpad solution, it has that navigation portal on the left-hand side. I quite like that. But sitting and trying to click on his little tiny objects in there in the merge field, it's miserable. So instead, I just copy that and I say, hey, I'm going from this module to this module. He has two relationships that are in there, if I'm not, or maybe just one relationship. And I just say, change it from this one to this one. And suddenly you can paste that navigation portal from one place to another. That could be something I can go back and show you guys when we have a little bit more time, because we're kind of starting to wrap up on here. Let me see if I had any other notes on here that I'm forgetting. Yeah, the two main things that and I've already mentioned this, but I would really kind of want to just get across is if you go to play with this, expect it not to work the first time. And don't beat yourself up. Try to figure out where it's broken. So last night when I was doing this, I kind of glossed over this, but when I was duplicating the scripts, they were all broken. I'm like, why is it broken? And because I've done this many times before. So on some of these, the fields will just say field missing. That's not really helpful. But then on these other ones, there will actually be the calculation. Let me find one. And it'll be commented out. There we go. So something like, oh, that's actually still a field. Well, yeah, one of these will be commented out. And I noticed it wasn't on the buoys, but again, I was missing the S on accounts. So just pay close attention to that and just try it a few times. And what's cool about this little tool over here is you can just re-inject the code over and over again. In fact, one of the things that I'm doing in the new one that I found was helpful for me is this is a global. So whatever you put into there, once it's changed, you got to go back to the source and put it back in. That's why I can jump from one repo to another and run new sequences. But in the new one over here, it's actually a record and there's a source versus an output. So if I screw it up, I can just run the thing again. But for you guys that don't have access to this new one yet, because it's still buggy and unfinished, just remember that if you have a bad find and replace, you need to go back to the layout and hit the get clip again. And the other thing is that certain things are just going to break or look funky. Date fields, from what I have found, will reliably break every time. And then if you noticed in here under detail view, if we make a new record, there's some sort of visual issue there on notes. I haven't sat and spent the time to troubleshoot it, but I'm pretty sure whatever it's going to take to fix this is demonstrably less time consuming than building this whole module out from scratch. I do see a comment there, Margaret. I'm going to take a quick glance at it. Could this, I guess I'll read it out loud. So Lyndon Austin is asking, could this be used to copy and paste a group of relationships to a different file? The table / fields can be copied easily to a different file. The pain is rebuilding the relationships. How can you pick which relationships you want to copy? So if I'm understanding this correctly, this actually ties into what Richard was dealing with the other night. And I'll give you guys kind of a loose example. He's got two copies of, well, not two copies of Starting Point. He's got a customer file and he wants, or it is, he's got Lite, FMSP Lite, that doesn't have some of the modules of our full versions of Starting Point, but he realized he needs timesheets brought over from one of our copies over to the other file. So one of the shortcomings with this, Lynn, is I can't go to another file and say, whoops, say, for example, go into the relationship graph here and grab this. So I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, which you can't copy that to your clipboard. You can't hear it now, but I'm getting that feedback that's like, stop it. So I can't use it to copy and paste structure. The structure has to be done manually, except we do have a tool. Lynn, if you haven't seen it, I would go back and watch the last stream that I did on the add-on for the doc manager. So all of these things for me are all kind of starting to tie together. So add-ons do let you copy and paste or install tables and structure. So with the doc manager, I realized that I could just have these placeholder tables, install the add-on, and then run a find and replace that says, don't use these, use this. So to go back to Richard's example, he wanted to move timesheets out of one copy of Starting Point and into a new copy of Starting Point. This would be pretty tricky. I bet you I would amend what I'm about to say right now if I actually had to go and do it. But here's loosely what I suggested to him. I would take a copy of Starting Point probably and just delete everything if you can, but timesheets or the module that represents it, so the tables, the relationship structure, and then package it to an add-on, install it in the other file, and then you might not necessarily need to do find replaces, but timesheets probably connects to your accounts module, your contacts module, your staff module. So at that point, yes, you would do find and replaces. So it's a mixture of the add-on tool and then doing find and replaces. And this is all definitely kind of a tricky area. And you have to navigate each situation, if you will, a little bit different than the other. Is that helpful, Lynn? You can add a follow-up question if I was totally off the mark, or and Marks, I'm going to venture to say not too many, if any, questions in the other forums there.
Not particularly. Just a comment that this would be good to do Launchpad. I've given up trying to click on all those small objects.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do it with, honestly. I didn't think about queuing it up for an example here, but I have files based off Launchpad. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is I marry Starting Point and Launchpad together. And every time I build a new module, I have to duplicate that navigation thing. Using this tool, it's super easy. Because if you're in a copy of Launchpad, you just need to make that relationship from whatever table you are to the navigation table that Nick has. Like icons are hidden out, open a copy up for you. So you make your new module, you make that relationship, and then you basically just go to any other table that you have, you highlight that whole bar on the left that has everything, put the XML into Wolf's Toolbox and say, hey, do the find and replace from like T, whatever the assets one is, or whatever module you're using as an example, home screen, T106 home, to T110, my new module, and the navigation one, and then you paste it in, and that left-hand navigation just works. Because trying to sit and edit those merge fields, if you've done it, is a real pain in the neck. Oh, I thought I saw Lynn typing there. So I could almost do that here real quick, but I'd have to make like a new module to show you how it's done. But making big modules is cool. On a much more frequent basis, what I do now is I go into a layout and I go, I want that portal, and I copy the portal. I change the TO from whatever main table I'm in to the new table, and then I change all the fields in it. So I could go over to wherever I want to. Where's the slide tab? I could take this one and I can swap out contacts name full with staff name, or just something totally different. Like maybe I want this to be a contracts portal, so I can say replace name full with T48 contracts, contract name or contract, change out a T01C primary address with T48 contracts with a contract expiration date or whatever it is. And it's just kind of nice because then all of your portals start to look the same. And as long as it doesn't take you too long to write those find and replaces, it's just kind of nice to be able to almost paste it. In fact, I don't know if I think he did a live stream on it, but Jake Shield, who's come here before, when I first made Wolf's Toolbox, I gave him an early release, and he made his own developer's assistant tool that does some similar things. Any other follow-up stuff there, Margaret?
Why don't you do it? Question mark.
Why don't I do the navigation thing?
I think so.
Here. I'm going to close these guys out. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to come down there, and I'm going to do a new repo on replay. And one of the reasons I'm making a new version of this, I just think it's a little clunky to use, so my apologies on that. So I'm going to make a new repo. We are going to call this nav demo. Okay. So we're going to come over here. We're going to go to assets. So let's say, home does have it. So let's say that home didn't have it. So I'm going to come over here to assets. I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to take that whole object, copy it, come over here. I'm going to do get clip. I'm going to add a find and replace repo here. Okay. So this is one of the reasons I like having two versions of FileMaker open. I don't think I do at the moment, but I'm going to come over here to assets. Where's the navigation relationship? Probably right in front of me. So I'm just going to save that to my clipboard. Copy. I'm going to come up here to home. I think it's 106, T06. And there's navigation. So if I were building a new module, I would have to add this TO in this relationship. So we're pretending right now that it doesn't have the portal on there. I just made this new relationship. I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to cancel. I'm going to come over here. We're going to go to home. We're going to delete that. And I promise I'm not just putting the same one back in. So we're going to go to browse mode and save. Okay, so you can see my navigation is gone. I'm going to come over here, and this is the new TO that I need, TO6 home. I need the old one. And so I'm going to come up here. I got a cool little tool that saves old clipboard stuff. Okay, so there is the one from assets. This is the XML for it. Here's the new relationship to TO6D, and we're going to do the find and replace. And hopefully doing all this live on TV with all just works out perfect. I'm going to do set clip. We're going to come over here, and we're going to paste it. I forgot to look, but I think it's still the 0, 0 position. I don't know why this layout's taller than it needs to be. We're not going to worry about that right now. And look at that. I go to assets. I come back to home. It just works. So hopefully whoever it was on one of the other things kind of followed that. Copy the XML into here. Make sure you have the new relationship, old relationship, new relationship, and then set clip, and it just pastes right in and works. So I use that a lot. I think we're close to landing the plane here. I hope I didn't lose you guys. I tried to go a little bit slower on this one than some of the past ones. It is a little meta. I've actually taught some of our junior engineers how to do this, kind of how to run before they should walk. But knowing that they can go and do it and they're not necessarily experts at FileMaker, I would encourage people to play around with this. Don't try to necessarily start with duplicating accounts to a new accounts one. Go back and watch the video on the doc manager, or more importantly, the first one. I think Margaret put a link in there for the notes one. That's a lot simpler, and try just doing that. Or if you're someone that likes Launchpad, that one that I just did there is actually really simple. Like, to me, that's an easy win, because people really like that navigation portal, but rebuilding it is a real pain in the butt because it's got hide conditions, conditional formatting, little itty bitty merge fields that you have to know Nick's trick that you edit it and then change the size to put it back where it is and it comes out of the portal. The sorting on it, we kind of just skipped over how this will fix the sorting if there's one on the portal. Relationships you still have to set up. So it's really neat to save you some time on some things so that you can really focus your time on the customizations that you want to do that are more unique. When I was new, I loved rebuilding stuff like this because I could do it. Now that I've done it, it's boring to me. I'd rather engineer something that's brand new and kind of neat for someone. So I hope that is helpful. And though Boss missed it, I know Stu had also kind of mentioned previously, and I think Stu wasn't able to hang out all today, that this tool is something that he quite likes and has been using. So,
well, no, we got
that's my 2 cents.
This is great.
What's that?
But we've got a lot of feedback that this is great and super useful and a huge time saver. So thank you very much, Kristian. We greatly appreciate having you on for it.
Thanks, Mark. And of course, if people have questions, I think you all know how to reach out to RCC for questions.
Yes. support@rcconsulting.com. Okay, with that being said, I think I'm going to wrap us up. Thank you again, Kristian, for coming, and thank you everyone else for coming.
Hey, thank you everybody who's attending. We love having your guys' interactions with us.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!